Hello and welcome to a tutorial about finishing up Gnewt from Leave Gnome Stone Unturned. So here we have a finished version of Gnewt where my tension was different and my loop is much bigger. I may have to stretch this one out to be nice and gloriously loopy. Maybe that's what, there we go. All I need to do is tug a little bit. So you can see what we need to do is we need to bury this end, put on 2 arms and a nose. So let's get going. The reason I've left the end to show you is that because we haven't put any weighted stuffing in Nombleberry is a little bit tippier than the average gnome. It just wants to kind of rotate off that little bit of the end of the stitches because you can see there's just a little bit of an increase there. So and that's fine because most of the time Nombleberry will be in the backpack or Gnewt will be on the back of Nombleberry. So what I was just going to say is once you've secured off those stitches and if it's going to be a toy, you tie a little tiny knot, and then when you go in, just go down and across and tug a little more tightly, because what we want is we want that to pull down a little bit. Just pull that a little flatter. And then to keep that, what we're going to do is we're just going to go down in a slightly different place, not so different that it'll be visible in the front, and just go through the stuffing all the way through into the other side. And having gone through the stuffing to here and then over to here, that should be enough to keep that flat for the most part. If it doesn't seem like it to you, go through a few more times. All right, snip off that end, pop right in. Okay, now the key thing is to figure out which side you want the face to be. Depending on how yours went, it may be seamless or you may have a strong preference. I'm going based on how tidy this wrapping is, and to me this is the front. So we'll start with the nose. The nose is a little bit of I-cord, and we're just going to tie up these 2 ends. And it's just a little bit awkward to start, but as we start to pull, they will sort of pop together and create a little nubbin of a nose. I'm going to tie that one more time to make that nice and secure. And then what we're going to do is, as ever, thread on the yarn needle. Okay, so whatever stitch is going to be sort of the center front, and it could be between 2 stitches. I'm going to say roughly about here, so about here. Just go under 2 legs of, whether it's 1 stitch or 1 leg from each, it's not a big deal. The big deal is about making it look awesome. So you're going to go in one direction with 1 strand of yarn, then thread the other tail on, and then kind of pull it apart so you can see and go in the other direction with the other tail under the same 2 legs of a stitch or 2 stitches, and then just give that a nice good tug so that they are firm. Now we're going to knot them again. There we go. And pick one end and bury that one. We don't need both ends live. All right, so just going right through, right to the other side. Pull it taut and snip so that it'll just disappear right away. And then we gotta make this nose behave a little better. I mean, unless you like it the way it is, then just leave it be and do the same thing with this end. So depending on what you want, you may want your nose to be a little more like so that the stitches are in line with the body, or you may want it so that they're sideways. This is your chance to use this end of yarn to sort of go from the back and scoop from here to here, and let's say at least 3 places, sort of bottom, middle, and top, so it does what you want. So anything you want to settle down or like change the shape, even depending on where you go through, you can change it a little bit. So I don't know if you can tell, but things got a little wonky right there in my I-cord. There's this kind of loopy flappy bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through here and also right beside there, because I think if I go through that longer strand, it's just going to pull loose and it won't actually tighten down. So then I've got that. So that's one section of the nose. So now I need to go down and go beneath the nose where it will be hidden. So it's not like I go from here to here, because that would obviously just be a very visible stitch. So we're just going to go down here and we'll go through, and that'll sort of affix the bottom of the nose there. And now I'm going to go very, very close again, and I'm going to go right up through. And I'm just making this up. I mean, I've done this a couple times now, but every nose is a little bit different, and every time I do this, I make slightly different choices because the eye cord's a little different or whatever. So I want to go down in a way that will not be very visible. So picking a spot on the eye cord that looked okay. So I am going to separate the stage of getting through the nose and then securing it to the body, just because then I can get the angle I want on the nose and then on the body. So again, I'm just going to go under a little bit of the body stitch there, and then I'm going to shoot straight up and aim for the top of the nose. And now I'm going to see what have I wrought. All right, so that's looking pretty good to me. If I bang it around, it doesn't like substantially change. Sometimes you do it and it looks perfect, but only if you don't breathe on it, and that's obviously not a great situation. So things are looking pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do is just going to go down, and that will secure it to the, because I've just gone through and through the nose and then through the body. And then I'm going to go under the yarn somewhere. I've been pulling pretty tight to get it snug, and that's why it's harder to go through. I'm going to make a loop, go through the loop twice, and then very carefully kind of push down, down, down to get that knot as close to the nose as possible. I'm going to go up through the nose once, just to try to pull that knot into the nose, because that knot is very white and kind of different and separate from the nose at the moment, but by going up and through the nose, we've pulled it to the point where it's kind of part of the nose. And depending on what you want to do, you could just cut it now, or you could go back down through the nose all the way to the back of the body, pull it snug, and that end will pop right in. Okay, so now we've got our cute little button nose. All right, unlike most of the adult gnomes I designed, this gnome does not have a brim to sort of hide the end of the arm up under. Usually you'll find I'm kind of like, if this was the nose, like the brim is draping over or whatever, but we don't have that. So instead we have to kind of use the Estonian braid or the garter ridge that you made to hide the gnome. And what we need to do is we need to figure out, so we want it ahead of central. So we don't want it so that it's right at the exact center. We want it a little bit ahead, and we want about 10 stitches between them. And this is just a rough guide. You can do whatever you want that makes you happy. All right, but let's count and see. If I were to go here, then there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that would be here and here. That looks a little bit like I'm too far to this side. So we'll go one this way and one that way, sort of a deal. Okay, that looks about right to me. So I'm going to go under the very first stitch underneath the Estonian braid, pull that on. I'm going to hold this here, and you can see the way we've gathered up the eye cord, the last stitches there are sort of stitch-like things. So if we just kind of keep the way we work the stitches in keeping with that, it won't be it won't get too terribly messy. It's not like when we can hide it under the brim, we can do a lot that it doesn't really matter how perfectly pretty our arms are. And if you're filming a tutorial, you will lose the end of your yarn off your yarn needle about 1,000 times per tutorial. So if you hate losing your yarn and having to thread it again, pro tip, just don't shoot any tutorials. Okay, so one thing I like to do is I like to do the arm in a couple directions. So go down a couple times this way and then a couple times more from, so grabbing something from the body and then going through, just to give it, because if you come from a couple of different angles, you help it withstand different kinds of stress. if the gnome will be a toy, I also always make sure to go at least once or twice from the underarm. I sometimes get really talkative in these tutorials, and then I don't actually pay attention the way I should to the last detail or two. So let's make sure I get this looking really good. And not rush this. Okay. So what I would do if it was a toy is I would pin this, or not pin it up, but I would push this up. I would first go to the other side of the gnome. Here we go. So I'd bring the needle over here, and I would inevitably, of course, look at me go, lose that yarn end. Alrighty, so we've come to this side. Then I would push this up, and then I would affix it from here. I would go and I would do this as well, so that I'm getting from like two sides on top and then one side on the bottom, I'm getting a security point for toys. Just because kids tend to use arms to hold things, and they have a really high stress level. The toys have a high stress level. I don't mean that, sorry. Whew. All right, so let's just, again, if this was a toy, I would knot that off, but as a decorative Gnewt, we will let that be like that. All right, so then all that's left is for me to attach the second arm about there, and then we're done. Look at that go. Some of you may have noticed that my Gnewt has some floppy bits here. When I was knitting, I was watching a very tense TV show, and I didn't always catch the plies exactly right. There's just a little bit of messiness. And so before I take Gnewt's, what's the word I'm looking for? Pretty photos. I'm going to do a little bit. I'll take some of this same colored yarn and just kind of work it in there and cover that up a bit. But that's because my gnomes need to be camera ready in a way that most gnomes don't. I hope these tutorials helped you. I hope that knitting Gnomelberry and Gnewt made you really happy, and I can't wait to see your versions. Happy gnoming.